What makes narcissistic personality disorder the most unique mental illness is this. You see, when you think about a mental illness, like you say, like bipolar disorder, here you have a normally developed person that has a mood disorder, and you could look at the symptoms of that disorder, how it impacts their life. And then you have ways to stabilize that person, mitigate the instability with medication and whatnot, right? Well, you see, when you think about mental illness, you think about a person with a mental illness, don't you? Right? And so sometimes you see what people do is they think about narcissistic personality disorder in the same way that you have a person and they have signs of narcissism. And if it rises to a certain threshold, they could be diagnosed. You see, that's sort of the DSM-5 way of looking at it, where, you think somebody's a narcissist because they possess a threshold of traits. No. The DSM-5 is nothing but a manual to assist in clinical diagnosis. And somebody doesn't need to have the disorder, to be diagnosed, or vice versa, meaning that somebody isn't a narcissist merely because they're diagnosed as one, and somebody isn't one if they aren't. So you hear people say, well, in order to know, they have to be diagnosed. Well, whether they're diagnosed or not makes no difference as to whether they are or they aren't. And the reality of what makes narcissistic personality disorder distinct is that somebody with narcissistic personality disorder is not somebody that has narcissistic traits and that crosses a certain threshold of behaviors. And then they're like, okay, well, that makes them a narcissist. No, the behaviors are resultant from the disorder. And the disorder, and what makes it unique, is it is all-encompassing. That every single behavior, every single sentence, every single action, every single thought, every single ideation, every single goal, every single motive, every single aspect of a human being with NPD is NPD. That what you have with a narcissist is you have a false self and a pathology. That it isn't somebody whose narcissism flares up or somebody who gets an injury and then acts a certain way. It's an unmitigated mental illness with no cure, no way to resolve it, because it is something that happened so early in childhood, it disrupted everything about the development of that mind. It's all-encompassing. That it isn't a person with a disorder. It is a disorder with a person. That the malformation of the mind of a narcissist is universal. That's why they all seem the same. Is because somebody with this disorder, everything about that human being's existence is defined within the boundaries of the disorder, and there's nothing outside the boundaries of the disorder. That everything you're engaging with, everything you observe, everything you experience is the disorder. It's just that people happen to like certain behaviors. Yeah, like you would wish that, you know what, if I could keep the person that love bombed me and that really great guy, and then get rid of the other stuff, if we can find a way to get them to not devalue and get them to not go into injury, then there's something to work with. And the reality is no. That even the behaviors that you love, even everything you like about the person, is also the disorder. That you're engaging a false self. That underneath the false self are not the expected emotions and motives that you would find in a normal person. And so when you're arguing with this person, when you think that they're angry, when you think that they're being kind, when you think that they're loving, you are engaging a false self. You're engaging a pretentious emulation of normal behaviors resultant from observation. That they developed a false identity because they don't have one. That anything and everything that you engage with in these people is the disorder. Does it mean that they're not a human being? No, it doesn't. But there is nothing but the disorder. That this is not somebody that has a particular mental illness and then it has a certain way of manifesting aside from this person. that there's like this good person there, and if they didn't have this thing, no, there is no good person there. There isn't even really a bad person there. That all there is a disorder. Somebody whose mental development was arrested at the age of 2. And they have a defensively postured, artificial self that they had to invent in lieu of a more permanent personality structure in psychology that requires narcissistic supply to maintain its existence in reality. That without the cooperation of you and other people, that this person would not exist. That there isn't somebody with a disorder. There just is a disorder manifested as a somebody. That everything you want them to change into, are just favorable behaviors. You might as well just create a relationship with a lifelike sex doll and program it with artificial intelligence and tell it how you want it to act. And that would be the equivalent of the best case scenario with a person with NPD. Are they human beings? Sure. Are they people? Yes. But they are very distinct. Their mind does not work in any way, shape, or form like yours or mine. It just doesn't. And there isn't anything we can do except be aware of it and understand the implications of these relationships and what they do and what they cause to people. Because they really dement and destroy the lives of otherwise healthy people. And so there's no need to hold out hope, but people need to start to reconceptualize this, that this isn't just a threshold of narcissism that creates the line of demarcation that would define somebody with traits and somebody with the disorder. Are there people that can have narcissistic traits and not have the disorder? Absolutely. I even believe that there would be cases of I would call latent narcissistic personality disorder, where all the symptoms would be diagnosable, but it would have a different prognosis merely based on when this person became that way or when the trauma that catapulted them into that disorder occurred. Do I know if that's true or not? I don't, but I would study that. I would be curious because my philosophy is really simple. You traumatize a child at 1.5, 2 years old, 3 years old, before they're capable of cognition, before those emotional pathways are really even matured, before they should ever experience that level of pain and fear. And you disrupt their capacity for the development of a personality because they will have a defensive posture going through childhood, masquerading around with emulated behaviors, and they will not have those originating moments that create the normal structures and dynamics of the human personality. And so they don't develop one. They maintain and retain the framework of the mind of an infant, causing perpetual entitlement only because the mind of an infant is only designed to get its own needs met from an emotional standpoint. And they will go on to develop cognitively, but they'll always live with entitlement. They'll always live with the need to prevent narcissistic collapse, because their internal emotional environment was obliterated. And so they have to exist as a false self. And that's all there is. There's a false self, there's a damaged core, there's a bunch of behaviors that are emulations, there's some rudimentary and emotions and things like that, and they could be geniuses, they could be talented, they could have many different things. The thing that they can never have is they can never have true empathy. They can never really understand the nature of people because the understanding of people is beyond their capability because they don't have the empathy required to generate any ideations that would include what would make you who you are. Because it's like color blindness. They haven't developed those areas of their emotional framework. They're just non-existent. So they're like emotionally colorblind. And so it's not somebody with a mental illness. It is a mental illness with a somebody.